When you think of modern Formula One, you think of Mercedes Petronas. 8 consecutive Constructors Championships from 2014 to 2021, 7 Drivers' Championships in that same period, hundreds of race wins, pole positions, and podiums. But how did a team that was struggling to consistently win races before 2014 suddenly become the most dominant force in Formula One history? Today, we're finding out.
They build the fastest engine in Formula One. Since 2014, 104 poles, 100 wins, and 7 consecutive Constructors Championships. For the first time ever, a team has achieved that in Formula One. This is the era of Mercedes.
The answer lies in what might be the greatest strategic gamble in motorsport history, a gamble that nearly failed spectacularly before it even began. Before we dive into the era of Mercedes dominance, let's take a step back to understand the foundation.
Hi, I'm Lewis Hamilton, and welcome to my first day at Mercedes-AMG.
The 2013 Mercedes W4 is often overlooked in the history of Formula One, overshadowed by Sebastian Vettel's all-conquering Red Bull RB9, which secured 9 consecutive race wins to close out the season. But the W4 was quietly establishing Mercedes as a genuine contender. The W4 wasn't a total disaster. It secured 3 race wins, 8 pole positions, and second place in the Constructors' Championship. A solid car by any measure, but with a critical flaw. It had a habit of eating through its tires, limiting its race pace despite often showing exceptional qualifying speed.
Fantastic feeling out there. The conditions are really good also. So it's really a big joy.
Under normal circumstances, Mercedes would have dedicated their resources to further developing the Wave 4 throughout the 2013 season to challenge Red Bull. But Mercedes had spotted something on the horizon that would change everything. The most significant regulation change in Formula One history was coming for 2014. The 2014 season marked a seismic shift in Formula One's technical regulations. The sport was moving away from the naturally aspirated 2.4-liter V8 engines to a new hybrid era with turbocharged 1.6-liter V6 power units supported by complex energy recovery systems. These weren't just new engines. They represented an entirely new approach to Formula One power. The new units would combine internal combustion engines with 2 energy recovery systems, the kinetic, which would be recovering energy during braking, and the motor generator unit, harvesting energy from the turbocharger. Mercedes saw this as their opportunity. Shortly after the beginning of the 2013 season, the Brackley-based team made a crucial decision. They had effectively abandoned further development of their W4 and focused their resources almost entirely on their 2014 car, the W05. What many people don't realize is just how early Mercedes began working on their hybrid power. The story actually starts back in 2010 when Formula One was first planning to transition to turbo engines, though at that time the proposal was for 4-cylinder power units rather than V6. Mercedes' engine division, based in Brixworth, just a short drive from their Brackley chassis facility, immediately began putting resources into developing a prototype. As Andy Cowell, the former managing director of Mercedes' engine division from early 2013 to 2020, described it, "We had a 4-cylinder engine, for which we had prepared cylinder heads and a crankcase. When the decision was eventually made to switch to V6 engines instead, and the regulation changes were postponed until 2014, the team was initially disappointed. As Cowell put it, we went home in a gloomy mood and drank wine. But by the very next day, they had a new target. We need to prepare a working V6 by Christmas. The clock was ticking." Mercedes took a unique approach to engine development that showcased their methodical and innovative mindset. Instead of developing a single engine that balanced performance and reliability, they created 2 entirely different versions of the same power unit. John Owen, Mercedes' chief designer, revealed, "Essentially, we had 3 engines. The first, I think, weighed 250 kilograms and was practically indestructible. It was intended for monitoring power development. This massive tank of an engine was deliberately overbuilt, so reliability wouldn't be a concern during testing. Its sole purpose was to allow the engineers to focus purely on power development, without worrying about the engine failing during tests. The second engine was designed to be lightweight and expose potential weak points, helping the reliability team identify areas that needed improvement without wasting time on performance testing. Finally, the third engine was something in between, meant for racing, combining the lessons learned from both the performance and reliability programs. When Ross Brawn, who led Mercedes at the time, first saw the indestructible engine, he was reportedly shocked. how the hell they are going to install it? That was his initial reaction to seeing the indestructible engine monstrosity. Despite their advanced preparations and innovative approach, the Mercedes engine program faced a serious crisis in mid-2013. As the team approached a critical deadline to provide engine specifications to customer teams like Williams and McLaren, their engine was still far from race-ready. Cal revealed the dire situation. Mercedes had to release the drawings for Melbourne, but at that point, as far as the tests showed, the engine lasted only an hour in the test cell, and then it had to be completely rebuilt. The problems weren't isolated to a single component. Virtually every system was failing during testing. The internal combustion engine itself was unreliable, the transmission was failing prematurely, and both energy recovery systems were breaking down regularly. Around the time of the 2013 British Grand Prix, rumors began circulating throughout the paddock about Mercedes' engine troubles. This was concerning not just for Mercedes' works team, but also for their customer teams, who were relying on receiving functioning power units for their 2014 cars. The pressure intensified when Mercedes signed Williams as an engine customer after learning that McLaren would likely be leaving them for Honda in 2015. This meant they now needed to supply 8 cars with engines for 2014, a daunting prospect when they could barely keep one engine running. With the situation reaching a critical point, Mercedes management called an emergency meeting in late 2013. The stark reality was laid out. They were behind schedule, the engine was unreliable, and time was running out. Just imagine 8 cars with Mercedes engines parking on the side of the track in Melbourne. Terrible, isn't it?
His engine has blown.
Oh no, no!
Just when it all started to go right for Lewis Hamilton.
At this pivotal moment, Mercedes made a significant shift in their goals. Rather than focusing on winning the championship in 2014, their immediate objective became simply finishing races reliably. Mercedes staff agreed to work an extra 10 hours per week, and engineers were redeployed from less critical projects to focus on solving the engine problems. This was work under extreme circumstances, but I think at that moment, most people realized that we were passing a defining point on our journey. In December 2013, with preseason testing just weeks away, the team prepared a power update that Kyle described as a relatively small change that could bring a decent boost. This required additional funding, so they flew to Stuttgart to request it. The answer was a resounding yes, go ahead. In hindsight, the update seems brilliantly obvious, but was considered risky at the time: the split turbo design. In a conventional turbocharger, the turbine and compressor sit together on the same shaft. The turbine harvests energy from the exhaust gases, which directly spins the compressor to force more air into the engine. Mercedes took a different approach. They separated the turbine and compressor, placing them at opposite ends of the engine, with a shaft running through the V of the engine connecting them. What makes this story particularly fascinating is that it wasn't the engine team that came up with the idea, it was the chassis team. They were struggling to make the large, overweight engine fit into the car they wanted to design. So, they approached the engine team with a radical suggestion. What about a split turbo? This design offered several advantages. Lower intake temperatures, as the compressor was further from the hot turbine. Better packaging, allowing for a tighter rear end and improved aerodynamics. Reduced turbo lag due to the MGH being more directly connected to the turbocharger shaft. Better weight distribution in the car. But implementing this design was challenging. No one had ever done it before in Formula 1, and there were legitimate concerns about reliability with such a long shaft connecting the turbine and compressor. As the start of preseason testing in Jerez approached in January 2014, the anxiety was high. There were still numerous unknowns with every system in the power unit, and as Kyle remembers thinking, God, how many failures will there be in the first race on the other side of the planet? We can't perform miracles overnight, we'll just have to install the next engine. Will we reach the disgraceful point where we have nothing left to install because everything has blown up? The chassis team was equally concerned. John Owen recalled the mood at Brackley. You always worry because you're not the one building the engine, and you're not the one connecting it to the gearbox, so you worry whether it will hold up. Against this backdrop of crisis and uncertainty, the Mercedes W5 finally made its public debut during preseason testing in Jerez in early 2014. Day one didn't go perfectly. Lewis Hamilton crashed after a front wing failure, losing valuable track time. There were also electrical issues and power unit failures that needed addressing. However, as testing progressed, it became clear that Mercedes had produced something special. The W5 was showing impressive reliability compared to the competitors, particularly Renault power teams, who were struggling to complete even basic installation laps. Yet even as the W5 showed promising signs during testing, the true extent of Mercedes' advantage remained hidden, even from Mercedes themselves. John Owen revealed that in the early races, Mercedes was deliberately running their engines in conservative modes, fearing reliability issues. They also weren't pushing through corners due to concerns about tire degradation, a problem carried over from 2013 that they weren't sure had been fully resolved. The opening race in Australia provided a mixed start. Lewis Hamilton retired with engine problems.
We need to retire. We need to save the engine.
Massive disappointment for Mercedes.
But Nico Rosberg cruised to a comfortable victory. It was a clear indication that when the car worked, it was extremely fast. But reliability concerns remained. But it wasn't until the third race of the season in Bahrain that the true capability of the W5 was revealed to the world, and to Mercedes themselves. Owen described this race as the first manifestation of the car's true performance.
He outbraked himself, yes, he has. Lewis Hamilton comes back into the lead once more.
During the race, Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg engaged in a thrilling battle for the lead, but it was what happened behind them that truly showcased Mercedes' advantage. After a safety car restart bunched up the field, third-placed Sergio Perez fell behind at an astonishing rate, 1.7 seconds after one lap, 4.4 seconds after 2 laps, and a staggering 24 seconds by the end of the race. The Mercedes pit wall, including engine guru Andy Cowell, could hardly believe what they were seeing. The W5 wasn't just faster than the competition, it was in a completely different league. From this point on, the 2014 season became an internal battle between the Mercedes drivers, with the rest of the field fighting for whatever scraps remained. The W5 would go on to win 16 of the 19 races that season, securing 18 pole positions and locking out the front row 12 times. The 2014 season had established Mercedes as the team to beat, but what happened next would transform them from merely dominant to historically unprecedented. The W5 was just the beginning, the foundation upon which Mercedes would build an empire that would redefine what dominance in Formula One looked like.
A word from Nico Rosberg.
If the W5 was revolutionary, the W6 hybrid that followed for the 2015 season was evolutionary, but no less dominant. Mercedes didn't need to reinvent the wheel, they just needed to perfect it. The W6 built on the strengths of its predecessor while addressing its few weaknesses. Reliability, which had occasionally been an issue with the W5, was significantly improved. The car's aerodynamic package was refined, maintaining the excellent balance that had characterized the W5 while finding additional downforce. The gearbox, which had been completely redesigned for the W5 to handle the increased torque of the hybrid power unit, was further optimized for the W6. The results were devastating for the competition. The 1.6 won 16 of the 19 races in 2015, secured 18 pole positions, and achieved 32 podium finishes out of a possible 38 between Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg. Hamilton secured his third Drivers' Championship, while Mercedes comfortably claimed their second consecutive Constructors' title. The failure of other established powerhouses to challenge Mercedes served to highlight just how comprehensively the Silver Arrows had outthought and out-executed the rest of the field. It wasn't just about having more resources. McLaren and Ferrari certainly weren't lacking in that department. It was about how those resources were deployed, and the fundamental decisions made years earlier about how to approach the hybrid era. The W7 represented the culmination of Mercedes' understanding of the first generation of hybrid power units. By this point, they had ironed out virtually all the reliability issues that had occasionally plagued the W5, and had extracted every last bit of performance from the 1.6-liter V6 turbo engine and its associated energy recovery systems. The car's aerodynamic package was further refined, with particular attention paid to reducing drag while maintaining downforce, allowing the W7 to be devastatingly fast on both high-speed circuits like Monza and more technical tracks like Monaco. The numbers tell the story. 19 wins from 21 races, 20 pole positions, and a record 33 podium finishes out of a possible 42 for the team's drivers. Mercedes scored 765 points in the Constructors Championship, more than the second and third place teams Red Bull and Ferrari combined. While the Drivers' Championship battle between Hamilton and Rosberg went down to the wire, with Rosberg eventually claiming his only world title before shockingly announcing his retirement immediately afterward, there was never any doubt about which team would win the Constructors' title.
He did a fantastic job, so big congratulations to him, and I look forward to fighting with him next year.
I've decided to end my Formula One career. I'm probably one of the only people that it was not a surprise.
However, the 2017 season brought significant aerodynamic regulation changes designed to make the cars faster and more visually appealing. Wider tires, wider bodywork, and more aggressive aerodynamics were introduced with the explicit goal of creating the fastest Formula One cars. Some in the paddock hoped these changes would disrupt Mercedes' dominance, giving other teams a chance to catch up by essentially resetting the development race. Ferrari and Red Bull had been gradually closing the gap in the latter part of 2016, and the new regulations seemed to offer a genuine opportunity for a competitive shakeup. The Mercedes' response to these challenges was the W8 EQ Power Plus, commonly known as simply the W8 Diva. The car was notably longer than its competitors, earning it the nickname the Diva due to its temperamental nature when it came to setup and tire management. For the first time since the beginning of the hybrid era, Mercedes faced a genuine challenge. Ferrari's SF70H was a worthy competitor, and Sebastian Vettel led the Drivers' Championship for much of the first half of the season. The W8 struggled particularly on street circuits and in higher temperatures, where its longer wheelbase and weight distribution made it more difficult to get the tires working in their optimal window. However, as the season progressed, Mercedes caught up. Lewis Hamilton found another level in his driving, delivering a series of extraordinary performances in the second half of the season. The result was another championship double for Mercedes, their fourth in a row. While not as dominant as previous years, they only won 12 of the 20 races. They had proven they could adapt to significant regulation changes and still come out on top. The following two seasons saw Mercedes continue to fend off increasingly determined challenges. The 2018 W9 was a more refined version of its predecessor, addressing many of the diva characteristics that had made the W8 difficult to set up consistently. The 2019 season brought another regulation change, this time focused on the front wing and front brake ducts with the aim of improving overtaking. Mercedes' response, the W10, started the season with an unprecedented 5 consecutive 1-2 finishes for Hamilton and his new teammate Valtteri Bottas, who had replaced the retired Rosberg from 2017. However, beneath this dominant start, the W10 had its own challenges. The car struggled with overheating and higher temperatures, a flaw exposed most clearly during the Austrian Grand Prix, where the team finished 3rd and 5th.
But his luck ran out as he lost control out at turn 6, hitting the barriers hard.
This thermal limitation meant the W10 could only operate at its maximum potential within a narrow performance window. But that still didn't give any chances to other teams. Everyone was racing for second place at this point. Beyond the technical innovations, Mercedes' success was built on having the right people in the right positions and keeping them there. While other teams experienced regular turnover in key technical and management positions, Mercedes maintained remarkable stability. Toto Wolff, who joined as executive director in 2013, provided consistent leadership and a clear vision. Technical directors James Allison, who joined in 2017, and his predecessor Paddy Lowe, oversaw the chassis development. Andy Cowell led the engine department at Brixworth until 2020, ensuring continuity in power unit development. Lewis Hamilton proved to be the perfect driver for this team. His combination of raw speed, technical understanding, and adaptability made him the ideal pilot for cars that were often operating at the cutting edge of technology. But while Mercedes had created the most successful team in modern Formula One, they weren't done yet. The regulations were set to remain relatively stable for 2020 before a major overhaul planned for 2021, later delayed to 2022. This stability gave Mercedes one more opportunity to refine their concept before the rule changes would force everyone back to the drawing board. What Mercedes unveiled for the 2020 season was the W11 car that would not only maintain their dominance, but extend it to unprecedented levels. This wasn't just another championship-winning Mercedes. This was the culmination of everything the team had learned throughout the hybrid era, refined to absolute perfection. The front suspension was extensively reconfigured, with the inner workings of the wheels and suspension carefully modified to unlock new aerodynamic possibilities for the car's front end. The side pod inlets and surrounding parts were also modified, with the side impact structure moved from its previous top position of 3 years to a lower stance, a change already adopted by some other teams on the grid. But perhaps the most innovative feature of the W11 was its dual-axis steering system. During preseason testing, eagle-eyed observers noticed Mercedes drivers engaging in an unusual movement with their steering wheels, pulling them toward themselves on straights and pushing them back to normal position for corners. This brilliant innovation allowed drivers to adjust the toe angle of the front tires by pushing and pulling on the steering wheel. Reducing toe angle on straights reduced tire scrub, which lowered heat generation and allowed for more consistent tire performance over longer stints. The system also served as a drag reduction mechanism, providing an unexpected aerodynamic benefit. The combined effect of these developments created a car that was, quite simply, in a league of its own. At preseason testing, it was clear the W11 was quick, but few could have predicted just how dominant it would be once the racing began. The 2020 season was delayed due to the pandemic, finally getting underway in July with the Austrian Grand Prix. When the cars hit the track for the first time in competitive action, the true pace of the W11 was revealed, and it was bloody frightening. The statistics for the W11 season are staggering. 13 wins from 17 races, 15 pole positions, 25 podium finishes, Hamilton's 7th World Championship secured with 3 races to spare, Mercedes' 7th consecutive Constructors Championship, breaking Ferrari's record of 6 in a row. The W11 holds a special place in Formula One history not just for its dominance, but because it represented the pinnacle of a particular set of regulations. The car was the culmination of 7 years of continuous development under the hybrid era rules, pushed to a level of refinement that may never be seen again. And the struggle with building an engine in 2013 very well paid off for Mercedes, don't you think? It absolutely became the secret to their dominance for a little less than a decade. The question remains, can they do it one more time and come back in 2025? Let me know in the comments, and subscribe